this is a nothing. Yes, did they play perfect? No, they still win. Yes.
What are you doing if the Celtics win the championship?
If the Celtics win championship, I might break my sobriety. I might act up.
We did it! You got him.
All the way.
Celtics versus Heat. Celtics in what?
4.
Celtics versus Knicks. Celtics in
4.
Got Celtics in 4?
Celtics.
Hell yeah.
Use a vocab word from a couple years ago. It's mind-boggling.
That's it, DRG. Let's go. What do you think tonight? You think I'm worried about the Warriors? I ain't worried about the Let's go, baby. 18, baby. Load up the boat.
Why would you say that?
Because
I'm not, no,
recently he's putting up games like
above our head for the players.
literally right now.
But I think when Marcus, especially Marcus, when he got traded, I think that was a wake-up call.
You think
Rob.
right now
Rob,
it's still New York?
I do. And when I think of the Celtics dynasty, honestly, one of the first names that comes to my mind is actually Brad Stevens.
Woo, what is going on, everybody? Welcome back into another Celtics Talk Weekly post-game show. I am your host, Robert Tandrew. And with me are my two co-hosts, Nick Franco and Seamus Zarlingo. You guys know them. Tonight, the Celtics, they captured their 5th win in a row, guys. No Jaylen Brown, no Kristaps Porzingis, and no Drew Holiday for the Celtics tonight against a pesky Trailblazers team looking to make a run in the last portion of the season to get into the play-in. Celtics, well, they came out victorious, 129-116, the final score, guys. Again, a lot to talk about tonight. Some key role players stepping up. We saw a lot of action from a lot of different guys over the course of this game. Saw some JD Davidson, saw some more Baylor Shireman, saw some Torrey Craig. So a lot of different guys in the mix tonight on the road against Portland. Again, interesting moving forward here. Celtics now winning 16 of their last 19. They are officially back on pace to win 60 games. It would be their second consecutive year. Where are we at? Thoughts, reactions, takeaways? You guys know the drill on, in my opinion, a very, very impressive win.
who's going first? I don't know. And we both went.
I was waiting for you.
You take it. No, you take it. Well,
you
obviously, our team chemistry here right now, just apparently not as good as the Boston Celtics, because that's what I want to hone in on with this Celtics team right now is the team basketball out there offensively. I mean, it's to perfection at this point in the season. And what's really impressing me is some of those bench guys that you mentioned, Rob. Some of them are coming in and they're contributing to this team basketball, and they're hitting shots, and they're also really moving the ball around the perimeter. And tonight, of course, the Boston Celtics, no Kristaps Porzingis, no Drew Holiday, no Jaylen Brown. It's become a little bit of a story recently with guys missing out of the lineup. We really haven't seen a consistent Celtics lineup in quite a while now, and maybe that's a conversation we want to get into later. But at this current moment with this game tonight, the Boston Celtics came out. Some of those bench players came in. Shireman, JD Davison, some first quarter run. I know Griffin's not here tonight, but I'm sure the next time he's on, he's definitely going to want to talk about that. But Peyton Pritchard, phenomenal performance tonight. Jason Tatum, not the most efficient. Of course, Rob, we talked about between you and I before the game, but really Jason Tatum, one rebound, one assist off from a triple-double, 30 points, 9 rebounds, 9 assists. He was really phenomenal for the entirety of the night outside of his three-point shooting. His scoring in the first half was down, but he was really racking up those assists in the first half. The second half, he came out 24 points in the second half for Jason Tatum. So, of course, we talk about Jason Tatum every single game, but he did his job once again for the Boston Celtics. And Luke Cornett, look at Luke Cornett at the end of this game. He's out there barking. He's out there having fun. That's the greatest thing to see within a basketball team. I think the Celtics, and Luke Cornett certainly exemplifies this right now, the Celtics are having fun as a basketball team out there. And I think they're having way more fun playing basketball right now than they did back in January when we were going back and forth. Everything kind of seemed like it was through the motions. Right now, we've been talking about that during this stretch, but at least within within the lines of what the Celtics are doing right now, they're having fun playing basketball, and they're playing tremendous team basketball right now. I believe 31 assists tonight for the Boston Celtics. Anytime you pass to over 30 assists in a game as an NBA team, you're doing something right. The Celtics, they've been really passing the ball well lately between each other, and Jason Tatum, he's been the catalyst of that, but others on the roster too. Super unselfish. We talk about unselfishness when it comes to great basketball teams all the time, and sacrifice. A lot of these guys at the beginning of the season, part of the problem was the jacking of threes. It was just constantly just jacking them up, jacking them up, jacking them up. Well, now it feels like the team is kind of sitting there going, we know we can get a better shot out of this possession, and they make that extra pass, and we're seeing that more and more often. And I think Baylor Shireman right now, I think we'll get into him a little bit more later, but ooh, he's making a case for maybe a potential playoff spot, maybe not a crazy playoff rotation piece for the Boston Celtics, but somebody could come in there, play 6 minutes, play 8 minutes here or there, take some minutes from Brown and Tatum during the NBA playoffs, save them some rest. Shireman's definitely becoming an interesting player for the Boston Celtics at the end of the season, but tonight's game just kind of goes along with the theme of some of these other games, although I thought the Celtics tonight actually came out and played their game, played well. And if for some reason against the Portland Trailblazers, it's the Portland connection, it's Peyton Pritchard. I mean, he must get everybody hyped in the locker room. The Celtics show up and they're ready to play. And that's what we saw tonight out of the Boston Celtics.
Was that Pritchard's first career start?
I don't know if it was first career, but first this season, which I was thinking of it, which of course Justin not on the program anymore, but I was thinking of Justin when Peyton Pritchard actually started. I was going, uh-oh, is he going to be questioning his sixth man of the year candidacy now? Like Peyton Pritchard, he's starting one game. It's like, oh, you started a game against your hometown team. It's like, oh, sixth man of the year off the board at this point. But I know we had that conversation earlier this season, but obviously Peyton Pritchard first start tonight, and it was a perfect occasion to start him in. Really,
Yeah, perfect occasion, hometown crowd, and if there's anything that you want to pull from this final stretch is the opportunities that arise for these types of players that we were just listing: Luke Cornett, Baylor Shireman, Torrey Craig, Peyton Pritchard hopping into the starting lineup. These aren't things that you're going to expect to see during playoffs and minutes that they probably won't see for the rest of the season once the regular season is over. However, being able to build up that confidence, people are going to see these rotations come in during playoff time, and if you knew the team and watched every single game of the season, you'll understand why Sam Hauser hasn't missed from the 3-point range in his 10 minutes on the court during the first round, while other teams are scratching their heads asking, who's this guy that's lining us up? And it's just being able to gain that confidence within these players. And a lot of these moments are going to need to step up. Even players like Al Horford, their minutes are going to be a lot more diluted. So just the efficiency that they were playing with and the chemistry that was conveyed on the court tonight was just a huge thing that this team can continue to build off of and has during this 5-game winning streak, where I'm expecting to see a lot more of the same as this season continues to roll forward, trying to see where these guys on the end of the bench are going to stack up, how we can utilize them in a situation where they need to be put onto the court in a dire playoff game, and just being able to have these minutes and being able to match up against the Portland Trail Blazers, who have had a little bit of momentum going forward during this quarter of the season, trying to fight for that Western Conference play-in spot, and they were within an arm's length away, and it was a big credit to the Celtics for not allowing this game to draw much closer than it did tonight. They kept it within a reasonable 10-point margin, and at points they were able to bring in the starters during the fourth quarter just to close out tonight's game, and Yeah, just a lot of positives that you can pull out of it, and obviously the three players that we have mentioned on the show multiple times: Drew Holiday, Jaylen Brown, and Kristaps Porzingis. Just making sure that they are fully healthy when playoffs roll around is essential for this team. So obviously, them getting rest on a back-to-back night, I wouldn't be shocked if the Celtics had like a team A, team B type of ordeal. Obviously, some players from tonight would be playing tomorrow night, but some players that were on the court tonight, mainly Al Horford, that's the one guaranteed one we won't be seeing tomorrow. But maybe we'll see like Drew and JB on the court tomorrow, and Jason Tatum and Derek White have a night off. But I know those guys like to be out on the court tonight or court. And Jason Tatum also showed that through tonight's game. He was pretty low on minutes, and then picked it up during the third and fourth quarter, which I was expecting him to kind of tone down just to try to cruise out tonight's game. But he was able to put on a performance that carried out and made it such a closeout game for the Celtics.
Yeah, this was kind of a game I wasn't expecting to lose, but I kind of would have been like, okay, not okay. I don't want to say okay, but like it was a game where these are the Blazers right now are in the tier of teams these last like 10, 15, games or so for the league that are kind of like the dangerous ones. The teams that are kind of fighting to make a play in. They're young, they're hungry. Portland's not really looking to tank at this current moment. They've been the third best defense in the league for over 20 games now. They're playing good basketball and they're playing for something. And the Celtics are shorthanded. So like these are the type of games you kind of look at the schedule and you're like, oh, okay, like is Portland going to get the best of Boston tonight with 3 starters out? And Boston's bench answered the call. And again, it's like right now with the Celtics where we're at kind of is what you're going to get out of your top guys, right? The biggest concerns right now in terms of the Celtics and repeating are their bench. Are they going to get enough from those bottom end of the bench guys, right? The second half of this team. And can they stay healthy? So right now, I think Boston is doing a really good job at answering those two questions. You're seeing guys like Sam Hauser, Peyton Pritchard, Shireman now. Torrey Craig had himself a nice game, and you cannot forget to put Luke Cornett in the mix. They're playing really well, and they're catching a great rhythm before the playoffs are coming, and that is really important. You're giving these guys heavy minutes. You're giving these guys good looks at shots and good looks in the mix, and you're including them with the starters. Last night I said, hey Joe, like let's see Baylor get some run with the A team. What do we see tonight? Baylor getting some run with the A team. So again, from a coaching standpoint, I think Joe is doing what's necessary in order to get his guys ready, and I think the players are answering the call tonight. Again, I liked what we saw from Tatum in terms of controlling the game. No surprises there. Against a weaker team, he's going to be able to do that. Hauser was a big guy that we're going to talk a lot more about later. I loved what I saw from him, but I'm also not surprised, right? A game where Sam Hauser can't miss is a game where Sam Hauser is going to put up a lot of points, and that's really, you can kind of see on the stat sheet, that's kind of really all he was doing. But again, not going to complain, 8 for 10. But again, guys, for me, when you look at the Celtics and what they need to do to get ready for the playoffs, it feels like they're taking all the necessary steps now.
Definitely.
Of course. And I will say this right now about the Boston Celtics. They're hitting their stride at the right time. I mean, this is, I understand we've been talking about, they've been going through the motions in some of these games, but the silver lining in all of these games is they're winning. The Boston Celtics are winning. I mean, the last 2 losses come against the 2 best teams record-wise in the NBA, the Cavaliers and the Thunder. And we think about come NBA playoff time, the regular season records will not matter between the Cavs, the Thunder, the Celtics, anytime in a series. It'll be that series and that series alone. That is what will matter. And the Boston Celtics and how they're playing at that moment in that series, that's what's going to matter. And right now, the Boston Celtics are ramping up towards that moment, and they're hitting their stride. I mean, Cleveland, I don't know what Cleveland did today. I know they played earlier, but 4 straight losses before today. Could have been a 5th. I'm not sure if the Cleveland Cavaliers lost or not this afternoon. But the Oklahoma City Thunder, on the other end of the conferences, they haven't really fallen off this season, but both of those teams are going gung-ho in the regular season, trying to get as many regular season wins as possible. And the Boston Celtics, they've already been there. They've been the 1 seed before. Last year, they were the number 1 seed. They've been either 1 or 2. Really, the last half decade, there's been years where they've been 3. The 2018-19 disastrous season, they fall down to 4. 7 in 2021, they're down there. And that's just a weird throwaway season, essentially. But other than that, the Boston Celtics have been a top 3 seed in the Eastern Conference with Brown or Tatum pretty much every year. And so this iteration of the Boston Celtics, even with Drew Holiday, even with Kristaps Porzingis, obviously Al Horford as well. Those guys, Derek White too. Those guys know what it takes to go 4 rounds and win a championship, and not only 4 rounds and win a championship, but 4 rounds and lose a championship. I mean, we think about 2022. Though Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Derek White, those 3 players, Al Horford. I mean, 4 players. They were on that squad who made it to the NBA Finals and ran out of gas against a more experienced team in the Golden State Warriors. Now, the Boston Celtics are that experienced team. And although there are teams above the Celtics in the standings, right now, the Boston Celtics, this is the point in the season we want to start seeing the Boston Celtics ramp up. Yes, we want to see guys rest. We're going to see that. I mean, we've been detailing that on post games leading up to tonight's game, because tonight, no Jaylen Brown, no Kristaps Porzingis, no Drew Holiday. I'm not concerned about Drew Holiday's shoulder anymore. When I see the shoulder impingement right now, I'm going. I'm not. The mallet finger was a real thing. The shoulder impingement, get it out of here. I'm not concerned about that. Kristaps Porzingis too. You see illness reconditioning. I mean, we've talked about that on here. Illness
I'm dealing with my
reconditioning.
own.
Now he's missing a game because of it. But those 2 guys, they're just resting. Jaylen Brown. I do wonder if there's some things, like, is there something going on with Jaylen Brown right now and his health? That is,
Right.
I would like to think they're resting Jaylen Brown, but at the same time, I don't know if you would rest him this long with something's wrong with his knee right now.
Bone bruise in the knee.
That
But
doesn't sound
that,
very good, I will say.
no, it doesn't. And actually, we didn't talk about this last post game show, and I do think it's worth talking about the Jaylen Brown injury, obviously, because I don't know again if it's rest. If you want my best guess, there's a rhyme. I like that. It was. I think it's just something where it's just like it's play throughable, but again, Boston has situated themselves now in a position where, okay, it's just bad enough. Yeah, we're gonna put you to the side. Take the trip off, the West Coast trip. That's how I see it. Again, we'll have to wait until tomorrow night, because that is when he gets, I believe, double checked again to get cleared. I don't know. That's my best guess. I haven't read much about it. There's really not a lot on it, but I think it's just bad enough where it's okay. Let's rest him. But say if this is May, I think he could play through it. Again, I'm not a team doctor. I don't have any inside scoops. If you just want my best guess, I will say this though. It's very important we treat this properly. South Boston, right? Like, you need to treat the. Right. It kind of reminds me of last year. Drew, there was a shoulder injury popped up with Drew, right around last 15 games. I remember saying, shut him down. It's not worth it. Shut him down. He played, I want to say, around half the last of the last 12 games. Kind of eerily similar to that, where an injury pops up at the end of the year when Boston's in a situation where they can kind of coast. So again, handle this injury though properly. If you need to shut him down for, half of the next remaining games to keep him, get him 100, because Boston, they do need Jaylen Brown in this title defense attack. I mean, they can't do it without him.
Well, that's actually a major part of the question now for the Boston Celtics is, can they go into the playoffs healthy? Because I think they're answering one of our questions right now is, can they go into the playoffs playing well? With 11 games left on the schedule, I don't have any doubt in my mind the Boston Celtics will go into the playoffs playing well. I mean, the Celtics could truly fall off a cliff in these next 11 games. That could happen. I will say that's a scenario out there. But the way the Celtics are playing right now, the way they're pulling out games, the way they're playing team basketball on the offensive end of the floor, and Robbie talked about their defense now against the Portland Trailblazers. I don't know how much defense was played there in that third quarter. He allowed 39 points, but outside of this game, and really outside of the Blazers games, every other game has just been a shutdown performance from the Boston Celtics defensively. I mean, they're playing well on both ends of the floor right now. I think in the next 11 games, that's only going to ramp up even more into the playoffs. And I don't question the Celtics being able to go into I don't question them going into the playoffs. How they're playing, I don't question that. But What I will question right now is, can this team be healthy going into the playoffs because of what we're talking about with that Jaylen Brown injury? When I hear bone bruise, I am just not. I'm not. I feel like that's led to a lot of just
I wouldn't be too thrilled about it.
I uncertain injuries in the past where a guy either sustains another injury on top of it coming
Right.
back, or that injury you could be in a position where you've torn a ligament somewhere and they're calling it a bone bruise. I mean, we've seen that a lot before. I'm not hugely concerned about this Jaylen Brown injury yet. But I will say that is the next question for the Boston Celtics, because you don't question how well they're going to play going into the playoffs. Right now, they've completely shed their late December, mid January selves where they were just going back and forth, not consistent whatsoever. I think everybody realizes now the Boston Celtics are here and they're here to compete. The Cavs games, the Cavs game, the Thunder game, those two games, they likely didn't boost anybody's confidence in the Boston Celtics from a national media perspective. But all these other games, and even those games where the Celtics were actually in a position against the Cavs where they had a lead, they lost that lead. The Thunder kind of controlled that game, but it's not as if the Thunder blew out the Boston Celtics. The Celtics were still competitive in those games. All of these
Right.
games as of late show the Boston Celtics their play right now. They're hitting their stride. They're hitting their momentum at the right time. This is what great teams do: is throughout the regular season, the experienced veterans understand the regular season does not matter as much as the NBA playoffs, and that's just what it is. I mean, you have to maintain a good seed. You have to maintain consistency throughout the season in your play style, whether it's offensively, defensively, what your rotations are, in order to be a good team going into the playoffs. But it's all about ramping up those things throughout the regular season, especially for the veterans who, if you ramp them up throughout the regular season, they're not going to be ready come playoff time. A guy like Al Horford, Drew Holiday, even Porzingis, we're talking about. But all these guys earlier in the season, they were the 500 basketball club in the middle of the year, and now all of a sudden the Boston Celtics are on a streak where they're record wise right in line with Cleveland and Oklahoma City. And
Oh,
to me,
yeah.
the Boston Celtics now, the next box that needs to be checked is those health concerns, those injury concerns, because Porzingis, Holiday, I'm not worrying about them right now, but all of a sudden it's like Jaylen Brown, that little red light just went off where it's like, all right, that's kind of notable. Bone bruise. It's like, that's not really led to anything good before. But that is the next thing for the Boston Celtics over the next 11 games, is maintaining that good play, but also maintaining their health. That is so important come playoff time, especially with this iteration of the Boston Celtics.
Well, I think it's also kind of important to note that, like, the question is, I think, regarding these injuries is, if Boston was in a situation, right, kind of throw it back to 2021, 22, where they needed these games, right? Like, each game was important for seeding or for whatever the circumstance may be, getting into like, we don't know what the situation is, right? Maybe the 7 seed need to get into the 6. Would you see these injuries on their injury report? I think that's the question. Like, are these precautionary? If so, then I don't think there's anything to worry about. However, if some of these injuries, right, like the Jaylen Brown one that has now surfaced, if you would see Jaylen Brown out on some of these bigger matchups, right, in these more important games, which, unfortunately, we don't get to really see. Again, we only really play New York is kind of the only game that's worth, like, noting. And even still, I think Boston has answered the New York Knick, questions this season already.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of the question regarding the health. Now, I just also regarding their play, Seamus, I completely agree with you. Right now, when you look across the league, winning a championship is so heavily predicated on the fact is what team is playing their best basketball, right, into the playoffs, which team's trending upwards, where they're playing their best basketball come April, but they still have yet to reach their peak, right? Last year, that's what we saw to Dallas, right? Dallas was not the best team in the Western Conference through 82 games, obviously, right? But they were peaking right at the right time. That's how they were able to get there, right? Boston, you could tell, like, they were cruising through the regular season, but each game was like they were getting better, they're climbing, they're improving. And, sometimes you might match up with a team that's also on that trajectory, right? That's how you kind of get these clashes of the Titans. I think right now it's safe to say, Franco, that Boston is trending upwards. They have yet to reach their peak this season, and they're climbing the mountain in order to reach that peak. And I will say this, now they're 24-4, I believe, in the last 28 games. could fact check me there. I checked it right before the post game show. I believe that's correct. Or 20-4 in their last 24 games. I apologize. That's what it is. 20-4 in their last 24. This stretch past 24 games has been more impressive and better than that 19-5 start. So again, you're seeing Boston trend upwards, which is very important.
Yeah, because you're starting to see all the other pieces and all the problems that were kind of question marks for this team kind of start to fade away and start to be answered by this team as the season has went further on. You're starting to see old habits starting to die before the season comes along. The main one that sticks out like a sore thumb after covering this team all season is adjustments after half times or being able to bounce back from a momentum shift, being able to respond to pressure, and just not over assessing yourself during these final games is super key for this team. Like with how much is predicated upon this playoff run, teams like Oklahoma and Cleveland, the way that they were playing was very high energy and very motivated, very game by game. We're going into every single game to win, making sure that we're leaving everything out on the court. As great as that is, and how as great of a motivation that is for a team to move forward, that's not going to bring you through a marathon very well. That well, the sprint and race that they are going through is gonna maybe bite them in the ass, and that's it. We've seen that happen to the Celtics in years prior. That when they got to the playoffs, you saw all that energy was dispersed it before they could even get through the regular season. We were watching these games during the final 10 games of the season, kind of watching the standings, seeing where the Celtics were going to line up. Now the Celtics can have their shoulders back a little bit, be able to rest these guys. Obviously, back to the point that you made, if the season looked any different, would there be a chance that we saw Giroux, Jaylen Brown, or Kristaps Porzingis on the court tonight? That is something that is extremely beneficial that the Celtics don't have to face or deal with this season, is having those guys be at risk to be injured, and also to be able to have that trust within your rotation to step up and take advantage of these opportunities, being able to fill in and have Sam Hauser and Peyton Pritchard play key roles within the offense is only just going to do a lot more for this team's chemistry going forward, and being able to have all 10 to 15 players, because if you include JD Davison, I feel like that he might get carried over during playoffs just to fill that 15th spot on the bench, just so they have that full rotation. And just being able to have those guys playing with the Group A players. Baylor Shireman is a player we saw through the first half, pretty much with Griffin up in Maine, just getting more developed and being a top tier scorer, which was why the Celtics drafted him in the first or second round of this year's draft, is because he's a scorer and a threat from the wing, which the Celtics are going to need, especially as years go forward and the CBA starts kicking in, and you're not going to be able to re-sign a lot of the bench players that this team has at this point. So getting him acclimated is huge, and being able to get his confidence up. And I don't know how much of a role he can play. I won't say he's going to be a Hauser-esque rotation player, but he'll definitely be up there and definitely will have a chance to take his shooting shirt off if it comes down to the final few minutes, and I feel really confident with what this team has, being able to close out games if they are up by 20 going into the fourth quarter, and you just need a crew to send out there to kill off the rest of the game.
Right, exactly. And with that, that's perfect segue, Franco, into the lead tracker, because that's exactly what Boston did tonight. You saw there, obviously, kind of going back and forth there in the first couple minutes of that first quarter. You saw a Portland team kind of come out shooting the lights out, and then Boston kind of eventually took over this game halfway through that second quarter, and they did not look back ever since that moment. They did not give up the lead for the remainder of the game, guys. Yet again, we see the sea of green conquer the Boston Celtics in Portland. Conquer the Portland Trailblazers in Portland. The Boston Celtics obviously doomed to conquer. So again, guys, the largest lead of the night for the Celtics was, you can see right there, 18, while Portland just trailed by 3 points. The game was tied 3 times. 12 was the longest run out of the Boston side. Only 6 lead changes. But again, 6 lead changes coming within just the first 6 minutes of this basketball game. So it was early and often for the Blazers. And once Boston took control, guys, they had not leaned back, did not look back. Again, only so much you can take from this game. One side of it, you're playing a weaker team. Yes, have they been playing well? Absolutely. I think the one thing that kind of is impressing here, and we've kind of alluded to it already, was you're missing 3 starters, and you got a lot of guys to step up. And in that lead tracker, it kind of looks like a lead tracker you might see if the Boston Celtics were fully healthy. So, guys, when you're missing 3 starters like the Celtics were tonight, how exactly were they able to get contributions from outside sources that they might not necessarily need to get, with the starters in? Like you saw, Hauser with 24, Pritchard with 16, Cornette with 12. So again, you got 13. You got a lot of contributions from a lot of different areas. How was Boston able to do that tonight?
Well, first of all, the take I'm about to throw out, Griffin, he's gonna think, man, I was lucky to not be on that post-game show, because I'm gonna look into the future right now. I'm gonna look into the future, and this Boston Celtics club is, unfortunately, this might be their last dance as this iteration of the Boston Celtics. The long run of this team is financially insane. Okay, financially insane. Next year, for the top 5 players on the Celtics roster in terms of pay, right? And really top 5 in terms of talent as well. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Kristaps Porzingis, Drew Holiday, and Derek White. Those 5 players next year make an extra $35 million on the payroll. So those 5 are going to be $35 million more expensive next year. That's literally like adding a max NBA player next year without adding an NBA player. So you're adding that in salary without actually adding a player. And there have been parts of the season where we've seen this group show some signs of regression, whether it's because some guys can't play the full 82 games when they're actually out there during the full 82 games. They're maybe not as effective, and I'm not naming names here, but I think you guys can kind of understand who I'm talking about. But tonight's game almost felt like, I don't want to say a tryout, but almost a window into the future for the Boston Celtics, where Peyton Pritchard starts this game, Baylor Shireman comes off the bench, and it is completely plausible in my mind that next season, that could be the scenario for the Boston Celtics, where Drew Holiday might not be on the roster, Peyton Pritchard might be starting, Sam Hauser might not be on the roster, and Baylor Shireman will be coming off the bench for the Boston Celtics. That is completely possible next year, and that is the scenario we saw tonight. And somebody mentioned this along the way in Celtics Nation somewhere. It was a podcast. I don't remember which podcast I exactly was listening to. I wish I could give credit for this take, but somebody mentioned that the Boston Celtics selected Baylor Shireman in the first round, and that was an interesting move from the standpoint of the Celtics added guaranteed money to their books by drafting Baylor Shireman with the 30th overall pick. And the Celtics could have traded that pick off to somebody out there willing to take on that pick and really the money of that pick, where the Celtics could just go ahead and move back 2 second-round picks, 1 second-round pick, whatever the Celtics wanted. They trade off that first-round pick, future seconds, future first, whatever the Celtics want. Instead, the Celtics went out and drafted Baylor Shireman, added that guaranteed money to their books, and we'll disclaim this for people out here. First round picks all get guaranteed money. Second round picks non-guaranteed. Those deals are completely up in the air. You could sign a second round pick for a 4-year contract that's worth $10 million. And that's ultimately what we do see very often, although the minimum's a little higher than that nowadays. But after that disclaimer, Baylor Shireman, he's a part of the guaranteed money club for the Boston Celtics. At the beginning of this year, he didn't sign a contract that was based on what the team wanted to give him as a second round pick. He was in a line of guaranteed money where the Celtics make that pick. The Celtics have to pay Baylor Shireman. Well, that leads me to the conclusion here of Baylor Shireman, if they were thinking, well, we're going to pay him a legitimate salary this year and add him to our books, the Celtics want him to play at some point in time. They want him to play. Why would they draft him and think, oh, this NBA ready player out of Creighton who we're giving guaranteed money to, we'll just develop him, we'll sit him all season. Now that's what they did for most of the regular season down in Maine, or really up in Maine. Me and Griffin talked about that the other night. Up, down with Maine, Portland, Maine, we don't know. But that's where Baylor Shireman spent most of the season, is in Maine with the Maine Celtics, formerly the Red Claws, of course. And this year now, all of a sudden, near the end of the year, he's actually getting run with this team. And I think it is somewhat experimental. I don't think we're going to see Baylor Shireman this often come playoff time. But this end of the year run, we've seen it before within the Celtics organization of guys quietly at the end of the year getting themselves in rhythm just a bit. And then all of a sudden, come playoff time, they're out there making an impact on court. We've seen that multiple times in Celtics history. And I think that's what could be going on with Shireman, as he's an NBA ready player. He's been developing in Maine all season long. And now all of a sudden he is getting those in-game reps with even what you were talking about the other night, Rob. You made a fantastic point on this. With the starters, with the A team, with those guys, not the garbage time team, not the guys who are coming off the bench at the end of the game. That lineup's going to look completely different. Not with the Maine Celtics. That lineup and that player you were talking about, Rob, the other night in Baylor Shireman is going to look completely different. He's actually getting a run with the A team right now. And I look at his trajectory within the Celtics organization. I go, he is online to play. He's online to play. The way he shoots the ball, the way he's unselfish with the ball, the way he has a feel for the offensive end of the floor. He doesn't look, you look at a guy like Jordan Walsh, when he gets the ball into his hands, he looks very hectic with it. He doesn't really know what to do. Baylor Shireman is very calm with the ball in his hands. He knows what to do. You'll see those dribble drive attempts, and he'll make a great pass off of those attempts, and we'll see the Celtics, they'll find a great shot out of that. And not only that, obviously, he can shoot the ball as well defensively. Still a lot to come within the defensive part of his game. But to me, he does look more athletic than he did at the beginning of the season. I think that's also part of playing in the G League, just constantly getting the more reps. That's why the G League is so important nowadays. Guys can go down there. And I mean, offensively, you kind of have to play the NBA to really get up to NBA speed offensively and what's going to come there against defenses. But defensively, there are great scorers in the G League too. And defensively, both off ball and on ball, I mean, that's where you can really develop down in the G League, is your defensive game as much as your offensive game in the G League. Because offensively, again, you're going to have to go to the NBA to really kind of work your way up. But defensively, can really gain those techniques down there. And I think Shireman's done that throughout the season. But that just, the whole point of this is Baylor Shireman at some point is going to play with the Boston Celtics. And they likely intended him to play this season at some point. Now we're seeing that. I don't think we're going to see it a ton in the playoffs, but we might see it here and there. And then by the time the next season rolls around, you never know. This kind of looks like almost Sam Hauser in 22-esque, where he comes up and all of a sudden it's like, oh, he's getting run at the end. And then Sam Hauser the next season, he's actually an important piece with the Boston Celtics. 22-23, that's when Sam Hauser really emerged. We had little sprinkles of it in 21-22. That's what it feels like with Shireman right now, where we're getting the sprinkles. We're going, oh, we like what we see here. And then next season, all of a sudden, we're going to see, oh, Sam Hauser, $11 million, you're gone. Drew Holiday, $35 million, you're gone. Peyton Pritchard into the starting lineup. Shireman, you're coming off the bench for Sam Hauser. I think that is 100% what could happen within the Celtics organization. And I hate to scare people out there and to look that far ahead, but I just think tonight's game, when we look back at it, far into the future, okay, like we're still focused on this playoff run. We've been focused on this playoff run this whole season, and we really haven't talked much about the future. But as the season, winds down, the regular season here, and we go into the playoffs, the future will eventually come. And I think we will look back to this game one day and go, oh, look, Shireman, Pritchard, they played in this game, and they were kind of the new guys. I mean, Pritchard in terms of new guy being a starter, that is, this season, and Shireman, coming off the bench. I think we could see with those two guys later on in time, we go, oh, they were kind of the new kids in their role there, and now all of a sudden they're actually solidified within those roles next season. I think that's something that we could see, and I think that's why the Celtics are also finding success right now. Is these guys are they're being seasoned to eventually take over roles on the Boston Celtics, and we're at a point in time where their development is actually shining through to the point where we're winning games this season and doing it in a, I don't want to say dominant fashion, but we look good while doing it.
So
good while doing it.
I wanna give my thoughts on if Boston is to go back to back. It's nearly impossible for the front office in new ownership to not eat the money, because you're coming off back to back. You're looking into a dynasty potentially in a three-peat. You just won back to back in an era that has been labeled very, very impossible to go back to back. So if they are to do it, then I'm going to sit here and say absolutely not. There's just no way that if you're Brad Stevens or if you are now, Bill Chisholm, you can justify trading Drew Holiday or trading maybe one of the end of the bench guys, a guy like Hauser, I could see, right? But you just can't justify that, right? You can't justify unless what you're getting back improves your roster in terms of what next year looks like. If you go back to back when no team hasn't done it now in 7 years, you can't do it. Just the pressure. If Boston is to lose this year, right, and not go back to back, I agree with you. I think they 100% shake up the roster, and you see those young guys get elevated quickly. But I think from a pressure standpoint, from what the management sees and what they can actually do, I think it's very difficult if you're Brad Stevens and you're coming off of another championship to deal Drew Holiday. I think you kind of, if you're Bill Chisholm and you just kind of got to eat the money and see what happens the following year. And if they don't do it again, right, say they drop it and they don't three-peat, like, mind you, this is in a hypothetical world that they repeat, then you make the move, right? Whether it's at the deadline, you see the trajectory, whatever it is, right? But right now, this team is in a state where if they do it again, just like this year at the deadline, there were some questions. Drew, is he old? This, that. They will deserve another run. They will deserve another go at it. So while I agree with what you say, I think you're just 1 year shy. I think this time next year is when you're going to start to see that. Again, assuming they repeat.
That's completely possible too.
100%.
Right? Assuming
but
this
we
is
are
a hypothetical repeat.
Yeah, and I will say we are in an uncertain period of time. That's why the NBA playoffs are so they're amazing, because so many questions are answered during the NBA playoffs, where you build up this entire regular season of questions, and then the NBA playoffs. I mean, you have this literal bulk of, like, here's 6 months of questions that we've built up over the season, and then in a span of about 2.5, 3 months, all of those questions are answered, and then of course the offseason transpires, and that's really where they come to fruition. But the Celtics, I think this season, championships. That's why I think, right, like, the narrative is championships save this Celtics roster.
Right.
But I will say, with new ownership, I'm like, I don't know what I see. For me, I see the entire crowd, like, everybody's calm, everybody's like, okay, new owner paid $6.1 billion, record in sports for this Celtics franchise. Like, he'll take good care of it. He'll take good care of it. Then there's another side of me where I look at it and I go, is this just some, like, other investment? Like, Bill Chisholm, like, I would love to have Bill Chisholm on the program and really interview him and get some Celtics insight from his perspective, because he's actually, according to himself, he's been watching the Celtics longer than all of us, so longer than our lifetimes. But we'll have to actually see if that holds up, because I wonder, Bill Chisholm, he's a tremendously hard worker, right? His tech group, he's made all of his money himself in his life, and with the help of others, I'm sure, but himself, he's self-made. That, I look at him and go, what if this is just another investment for himself? What if he's
I,
just
I do
like,
think there's
I'll buy the
evidence.
Celtics and we're good. And I don't want that to be the case, but it could be. And so that's where I'm like, what if he doesn't appreciate Drew Holiday? What if he doesn't appreciate NBA history? This is where I just go spiraling on the whole owner thing, where I'm like, what if he just doesn't, like, we think the narrative is, oh, championships save this team, like the legacy and everything. But I'm like, what to an outsider? Like, there are people who think like we're Looney Tunes liking basketball. I'm just saying, like that is a potential thing that could arise here. Where it's like, I bought this basketball team. It's like, who cares about this legacy stuff? Who cares about these trophies, these rings? I'm making money off this. It's like, wait, I get to save 60 million, or I get to spend it on one player or two players, and his name is Drew Holiday and Sam Hauser. It's like, no, I'll take the 60 mil. I'll take the 80 mil. I'll take however much $1 million, which Sam Hauser, like, that's the whole narrative right now is, oh, Sam Hauser's making 11 million next year, but to the luxury tax, he's actually costing the Celtics $90 million, I guess, or $80 million plus his contract, which team doesn't technically pay, league revenue, whatnot. But that is kind of an interesting thing. It's like, all right, 11 million for Sam Hauser. Like, I don't know. I don't know. Like, money talks. Money talks. Like the symbolism, everything that talks. The legacy stuff that talks as well. But money, it's pretty loud. It's pretty loud.
It is. Well, you know what? Let's dive into Sam Hauser because tonight this Sam has been somebody that we have questioned now for probably the past 2 months now. I mean, it's been a long time, but tonight and really recently he's been shooting the skin off the basketball, and tonight he did exactly that. 24 points for Sam, 8 of 10 from behind the arc. Guys, he shaved his head, and quite frankly, he looks like a new shooter out there. He's finally looking like the 2024 Sam Hauser we know and love from the finals run. Now, guys, Sam Hauser is, in my opinion, right now, the biggest question mark on the Boston Celtics. You see a performance like this tonight, and it's a little bit more reassuring, right? We've talked so much. Where does Joe go in the playoffs, right? Does he go Baylor? Does he go, Craig? Does he go Hauser? Does he stay with his guys? And I feel like the consensus on Celtics Talk Weekly here in our team has been Joe's going to stick with his guys, right? He's got faith in Sam. Sam's now been here for 4 seasons, which is crazy, really playing for now 3. You see a performance like this out of Sam, and is he trending upwards in the right direction is my first part of my question. And the second part of my question I want to touch on after this is because Seamus, you beat me to it. Is Sam Hauser the most replaceable piece right now on the Celtics team with the little emergent shining light that Baylor Shireman has kind of been given to us?
Yes, and maybe. I think that Sam Hauser, for his performance tonight, is absolutely standout, and this is the type of month that you need to see from Sam Hauser, especially on the cusp of playoffs on around the corner. If we can get Sam Hauser to have these types of performances today, he did it in the starting lineup, but if he can continue this momentum over off the bench during round 1, round 2, get us to around 3 to 4 3-pointers made in a game, it's a lot more difficult for a team to win. But you're seeing him play with a lot more confidence now, taking shots that I wouldn't have expected him to, the shots that you wouldn't even expect him to make, but you can really just see that the hot hand is flowing with him. When it comes down to this roster and looking at it in a future aspect, you can look at Sam Hauser, and a lot of people will just put him into that stereotypical white shooter off the 3 and D. You can find them at your local Uber Eats or Star Market. But I think what he brings to this table is a lot different than a lot of the other players you could plug into Sam Hauser's role. Just for the amount of time that he's been with the team and the amount of chemistry that he has built up around the organization, being able to just flow in and also develop into the player that he has become now. When it comes down to playoff time, Sam Hauser is probably the first option as a forward off the bench. Obviously, if there's if the team needs a little bit more of a defensive push off the bench and it needs a defensive wing to come in and need a energetic defensive stop, I wouldn't think the Celtics would be afraid to shy away from turning towards Torrey Craig instead of Sam Hauser in a situation like that. But in any other situation, I can see him fitting in fine. But if you look forward into next season and even like seasons after that, when we're looking at Sam Hauser's contract, next year, the only two players that are coming off the books for the Celtics, actually three, are Al Horford and Luke Cornett and Torrey Craig. So that will free up a little bit of dead money for the Celtics and might be enough for the Celtics to maneuver. And with the roster that's left over, I don't see really much more manipulation that needs to go on or any adjustments that need to happen other than filling in that center position, which could be assessed within the draft and is the route that I would hope the Celtics would go for instead of trying to reallocate cap space by moving players like Jrue Holiday and Sam Hauser, because they're the two probably the most notable ones that are on the top of the payroll. So
They're not worth their price tag. That's what you got to say about it. And
but
that's
what are you getting around the NBA?
That's the hard reality.
It's hard to look around the NBA and say that you can get more out of any of the players that are falling under it and that could be worth the trade value that they are.
Well, I also think like Hauser falls into the category of player. And I think the prime example of this, there's two that come to mind. Emmanuel Quickley is one of them, and Duncan Robinson's the other one, right? Where they're so valuable when they come up, right? Because they are so, especially shooters, spot up shooters are really an interesting one, because you saw with JJ Redick, and then you saw Duncan Robinson and the emergence of him in the bubble, and they're phenomenal. They're making like $4 million. They came out of nowhere, probably came from the back half of a smaller mid-level school. And right, obviously Virginia from Hauser is not a mid-level, but, or maybe it is. They've been kind of subpar recently, but like, you know, and he's worth it, right? You're paying him $4 million on the year, and he's giving you about 8 points per game, and he can give you nights like this. But it gets to a point where, oh, we owe him money, right? And we owe him some actual real money now because they have asserted themselves as a legit 3-point sniper. The question is that tool, right? Just that when you're a one-dimensional 3-point spot-up shooter, is that tool worth paying? Because there are so many aspects to the game. And in my opinion, you know, you ask me, when you're a GM, I think that you have to pay for the most volume of basketball. When you're paying somebody $11 million, does he contribute? And are you getting money from the rebounding aspect, right? Are you getting money from the assist aspect? Are you getting money on the defensive end of the floor? Do you see your dollars being spent on that end of the floor? I don't see our dollars, right? There's no money there's no money getting that is worth it on the defensive end of the floor for Hauser. All of our money is going into just him shooting the basketball. And how necessary is that for the Boston Celtics? Obviously, it's how they play, it's their game plan, it's their scheme, and Hauser's one of the best in the league to do it, right? However, there's a lot more aspects of the game. Now, if we didn't have this little rookie, 24-year-old out of Creighton sitting right below him that was kind of creeping up in Maine all season, I'd say, no, keep him. But I'm looking at what Shireman gives me. And I said the same thing about Pritchard, and Pritchard eventually answered the call. Shireman gives me so much more in terms of all aspects of the game. Shireman is constantly crashing the glass. He is constantly the first one back on defense. You can tell he averaged around 5 assists per game in college. That basketball IQ, when he's got the ball in his hands, it's very apparent. Today in the first half, he made a play. It was a driving to the rim. He spun. He draw 2 defenders. He kicked out to the corner for a Pritchard 3. And it was just like, ooh, like you don't see Hauser make those types of plays. That's where you want your dollars to be spent. So in my eyes, Hauser's role with the Celtics has been really solid for 4 years. But unfortunately, he's fallen into the path of what a spot-up shooter is. I mean, look at Miami. They spent $27 million a year on Duncan Robinson, and they have not been able to get off of him. And now it's like, oh, yeah, he came in and knocked down 4 threes, but here he is on payroll, and it's like we're not spending any dollars on any other aspect of the game. And I think in today's league, which is the most versatile we've ever seen the NBA, you really need each player on the court to really almost be able to do every asset of the game. Hauser can't do that. So I do think there's a question, and this playoffs will answer it. Again, if Hauser comes in and he lights it up in the playoffs, you think, okay, 11 million again, you probably have to eat it. But I with Shireman now in the shadows, really creeping up, I think he gives you way more in for cheaper now.
Who would you rather have for 11 million? Sam Hauser, Al Horford, or Luke Cornett?
But yeah, no, I agree. Horford and Cornett, no doubt.
I mean, for me, that first of all, Franco, you termed Horford, Cornett, and Torrey Craig as dead money, getting dead money off the books. That ain't gonna be dead money. You know why? Because those guys are gonna be leaving. I mean, maybe not Al Horford. We'll see what Al Horford does. I think he could be a veteran minimum guy.
Cornett could be out the door.
But that's what I'm saying. We're coming to the end of the regular season right now, and I'm going, look, like if we don't actually win the title this year, it is possible Drew Holiday is gone. It is possible that Sam Hauser is gone. It is possible 100%, even if we do win the title this year, that Luke Cornett is gone, because Luke Cornett, the way he's played this season, I think he's earned a contractual value that the Celtics might not be able to pay him. Now, when I say might not be able to pay him, that's in terms of the logistics of how much the Celtics are willing to spend. Now, if the Celtics wanted to spend on Luke Cornett a little bit more and that he was making above the minimum, they could go ahead and do that because they're able to sign their own free agents. And Luke Cornett, the Celtics will be able to do that over the summer, regardless of what the number is. But that could introduce more astronomical numbers for the luxury tax bill. But Sam Hauser, $11 million, I think he is the most replaceable player on the Boston Celtics. And Rob, I thought you made some excellent points there about Baylor Shireman, just his all-around game in general compared to Sam Hauser. That is what really sticks out is Baylor Shireman, his offensive game is way more well-rounded than Sam Hauser at this point in time, and even coming out of college. I mean, Sam Hauser coming in with the Boston Celtics, he was at Marquette, he was at Virginia, and these two players, they were completely different. I mean, Baylor Shireman played in a Creighton system that, to me, puts more of an emphasis on passing the ball and really playing all-around basketball, because Creighton, year after year, they used to be a Missouri Valley team, of course. I remember Creighton in the Missouri Valley a long time ago, not too long ago, but a fairly long time ago. They put an emphasis on team basketball and playing the right way, because they don't always have the most talented roster. They really don't. I mean, Creighton, it's not like, oh, all these crazy players are going to Creighton, but yet you see them in the tournament every single year. Now, unfortunately, they lost to Auburn this week, and talk about some March Madness, but they lost to Auburn, beat Louisville. But Creighton, you always see them in the tournament because they play sound basketball. Baylor Shireman is coming from a program where they played sound basketball, and he was there for multiple seasons. And now coming in with the Boston Celtics, he's now developed a full season with the Celtics as well. Now, not with the actual Boston Celtics, but with the Maine Celtics. And that is development to his game. It would be as if he's playing another year in college, if you're considering the season he had down in Maine, Baylor Shireman. And now you're almost looking at 5 years of progression for Baylor Shireman coming up into the game. And he's way more well-rounded on the offensive end of the floor than Sam Hauser. And you consider the contracts. I mean, look at the contracts. I mean, contracts, Baylor Shireman is making what nearly a minimum player would make. Sam Hauser is making obviously 11 million, and we're talking about, would you actually rather have some of these free agents that are coming up, Al Horford, Luke Cornett, would you rather have them at that number rather than Sam Hauser? Because Sam Hauser doesn't give you much on the defensive end of the floor. His offensive game is very limited, and he does do a replaceable thing now in today's NBA. But I will give a shout out to Sam Hauser, because of course he is our player spotlight tonight. 24 points, hit 8 3-pointers. And this is the thing. We're looking into the future with some of these guys now, but this team is still focusing in on this team this year. Sam Hauser, I think he is kind of flipping the script on what the playoff rotation could look like. I think now we're starting to see a run where Sam is giving us more confidence that he'll actually be the player Joe Mazzulla goes to come playoff time. Now, if Sam Hauser had this stretch at the end of the year where he just fell off a cliff and Baylor Shireman was playing well. Jordan Walsh got a couple of minutes. Torrey Craig came in and played well. You could see those minutes throughout the playoffs dwindle for Sam Hauser. And I still think there will be moments of maybe Shireman, especially Craig, come playoff time. But Sam Hauser, in the last 6 games now, Sam Hauser is shooting 44% from three. Well, 43.8%. So basically 44% from three. And for the season now, all of a sudden, after the entire season of us coming on here and oh, we're concerned about Sam Hauser. He's not hitting his shots. Oh, this, that. Sam Hauser is now shooting over 40% from three this season yet again, and that's every season of his NBA career so far. 4 years in the league for Sam Hauser, every single season over 40%. Still has some work to do to actually get that number at the end of the year to where it's actually at 40%. Of course, he can miss some more shots throughout the rest of the regular season, and that number could fall. But otherwise, another 40% shooting season for Sam Hauser, and that is something that I look at and go, for all the struggles throughout the entirety of the year for Sam, he's still one of the better shooters on the team. He's still a valuable commodity to the Celtics offense when he's hitting shots like he did tonight, because I thought in tonight's game we actually saw we saw an all-around performance from this Boston Celtics club in terms of the point score. I mean, you could see that from early on, and then at the end of the game, you see how many players are in double figures. But this Boston Celtics club, I thought what really turned them on at the beginning of the game was shots from Sam Hauser. And of course, he made 8 threes, but it felt like the Celtics actually started to pull away a little bit from the Portland Trailblazers when Sam Hauser was making those 3-point shots. So I think Sam Hauser still has a role, still has a spot on the Celtics team come playoff time for him to be important within a game later on, because I think we're starting to see Sam Hauser along with the rest of the team hit their stride. As for the future, that's out there. Sam Hauser, I don't know how long we're going to see him in a Boston Celtics uniform for all the things we talk about.
We'll enjoy
but
him
as
while
for
he's
this season, Sam Hauser, still a valuable piece of the Boston Celtics.
Well, absolutely. Super valuable. And he's got a really important role. He's the first forward off the bench, which is kind of why we're putting a lot of pressure on him, right? He kind of needs to be there for us. In those, again, so Franco said it already in the early in the show, right? Minutes are going to get diluted, right? These guys aren't going to, Hauser probably played 26 minutes tonight. I'm going to fact check myself. 38 minutes, excuse me. Yeah. 38 minutes tonight, right? That he's going to play, right? Yeah. I mean, he had the most minutes. He played the most minutes on the team tonight. Those numbers are going to get diluted, obviously, right? He's probably going to play around 12 minutes a game in the postseason. However, odds are when Sam Hauser is on the floor, one of Tatum and Brown are out. And when one of Tatum or Brown are out, this team takes a dip in production. We know that, especially Tatum, and just as much so as Jaylen Brown. Those are two integral parts of how the Celtics operate. So that's why there's so much pressure. When Hauser kind of needs to be shooting efficiently for him to be out there and contributing. And like you said, Seamus, right? Past 6 games, 39.8%, or excuse me, 43.8%. That's really good signs for Sam. That is exactly what we want to see. We saw it with White in the middle of the year where he kind of lost, like for some reason it wasn't clicking. And it was like, what's going on right now? Truth is, shooters shoot, man. And shooters are going to go through slumps and they're going to go through a hot streak. Let's just hope this hot streak with Sam kind of takes us through the playoffs. And if it does, then the Celtics are going to be really difficult to beat, because Hauser has that unique quality where if he's on, odds are you're probably not going to win. Right? Like you're probably, if Hauser's doing stuff like this and the Celtics are fully healthy, they're probably going to have sources coming from at least 2 other guys that just makes them really impossible to beat. So Hauser has that quality. You know, as much as we kind of been digging on him this year, he 24 points on 8 of 10 from beyond the arc. Like that's not nothing. Like we've seen this before with him, and he does have that trait. So it's very important, Sam. I mean, he is a very important piece of what Boston needs to do in order to win a championship, because he is the top forward off the bench. I mean, outside of your 2, all-star, all-NBA players in Brown and Tatum, it's Hauser. He's the third guy. And in a very wing-dominant league, it's very important you get something out of Sam.
Yeah, and even like Sam Hauser, I want to say this real quick about Sam Hauser. Look at the efficiency. I mean, obviously everybody can see it, but 10 shots from beyond the arc tonight, and he only took 11. So he took 1 2-pointer. The rest were 3-pointers. But 10 shots from beyond the arc tonight, hits 8 of them. Those are all the possessions where the Portland Trailblazers are forcing the ball out of Jason Tatum's hands. Now, maybe Jason Tatum, it wasn't every single 3-point shot Sam Hauser took, but just in the concept of the Celtics offense, you know you're going to get points isolation wise from Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Now, Brown, of course, not in the lineup tonight, but again, just talking about the Celtics offense, you know you're going to get isolation points out of those guys, and you know you're kind of going to get these miscellaneous points within the offense out of just your star power. But when it comes to the rest of the offense, right, the unselfish part of the offense, the ball moving around the key, finding the open hand, the hot hand, that's where the Celtics, if it's Sam Hauser is shooting 8 of 10, I mean, those are 10 of those shots. Think those 10 of those shots Sam Hauser's getting. He's not Tatum. He's not Brown. He's not one of the superstars scoring out there on the offensive end of the floor. Yet he's going to take 10 3-point shots on a night like tonight, and he hits 8 of them. 8 of them. I mean, that 80% from 3. I mean, he was 8 of 9 at one point. He missed 1 at the end, but still 80% from 3. Those 10 shots are off of attempts where the ball is getting forced out of somebody like Jason Tatum's hands, somebody like Derek White's hands, somebody like Jaylen Brown's hands. Now, of course, again, Brown not playing tonight, but Tatum and White, the ball's forced out of their hands, balls kicked around the perimeter, or rather, dribble, drive, kick, balls in Sam Hauser's hands. If he's going 8 of 10 from 3, you know you're getting this other miscellaneous work, most likely from an isolation standpoint, from Brown, Tatum, whoever in the Celtics offense. That's why the Celtics offense, their offensive rating, is amidst the best in the league, top 5 in the league this season. And for all the struggles the Celtics have had, they're still just a very, very elite basketball team because of these little intricacies like Sam Hauser, who can come in off the bench and hit 8 of 10 3-pointers in a basketball game. I mean, that is not easy to do. I mean, 80% from 3 in a game, I mean, we should really be giving that more praise tonight, because that is super, super efficient. Super.
And you make, I think, in my opinion, the most valuable point of this entire Sam Hauser take is the type of shots he's getting. Like, the Celtics offense is surrounded off the idea of collapsing a wide open paint and collapsing that defense and just kicking out and having them spray from behind the arc of guys like Hauser and Pritchard. Like, if there is one value Sam Hauser has, is he is really the perfect fit to put next to this Celtics team, right? With so much open space and so much freedom to shoot the ball. You nailed it, Seamus. That's how Hauser's gonna thrive, with looks from open paint, from kickouts from Tatum and Brown and White and Porzingis and Holiday. Like, it's really difficult, and it's really deflating from a defense to play 24 or 22 seconds of great defense, and you got Tatum collapsed in the paint, and then balls swung out to an open Hauser, and he's knocking down 8 of 10 attempts. So it's like, again, really deflating. And that is where Sam Hauser's value, as much as we've been banging on him and harping on him tonight, that's where his value is.
And I would like to say, like, when we look at it from that perspective and we see how valuable Sam Hauser is in that position, we obviously know who our in isolation scorers are, people you can count on to get you your points by themselves, don't have any dependent factors that they're relying on. But when you look at the players that the Celtics have, it's the matter of the fact that they can do that job as productively as they do. I mean, you look at around the bench, you don't want to really add it doesn't seem like the Celtics can really even add versatility, but like when you're putting these guys in like Hauser and Horford, how well can they mend in with these players, and how well can they do their job without taking away from the star power that you already have? And that's where I can see the argument to the value of a player like Sam Hauser. And obviously, I don't think anyone here is saying that Sam Hauser isn't a valuable player, because during this playoff stretch, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for him to prove that he can, and especially during the second and third quarters of games when you need the Celtics to get that TD crowd going and get that 12-point run in 2 minutes to fire up and get everything moving forward. So that's where I can see the value in I can understand why these players are getting the amount of money they are this
Right.
season. It just is really a matter of, well, it just gets a little foggy when we're looking into the future of next season and beyond.
Well, let me ask you guys this question, because I'm sitting here thinking about this as the tonight's game's going on. With this roster, right? What we saw tonight, what's their record? Where do they finish in the Eastern Conference with Jason Tatum running the show alongside Derek White as his number 2? Is this a playoff team without 3 starters?
So Franco's thing, see, he has the Celtics winning 62 this season, so I expect your number to be high with our reserves.
With the reserves, all right. Well, it obviously, well, it wouldn't be 62 games to this point of the season if that was the opening day lineup this year. However, I don't think they're too far. I wouldn't say that roster is too far behind the New York Knicks and Milwaukee Bucks.
Woo!
I would say that roster might be still looking around the 4-5 seed if that was the opening day lineup for this season. 4 or 5 seed is where I would put that.
So who is all in this lineup? Let's
So
let's
you're
be clear
starting
about this.
5. So you're starting 5 on opening night, right? Would be Jason Tatum, Derek White, Peyton Pritchard, Al Horford, and Sam Hauser. Off the bench, this is where it really gets thin. Off the bench, you would be sourcing production out of Luke Cornett, Baylor Shireman, Torrey Craig, and JD Davison. How many games does that team win?
I'm sorry, but see, this might get us into a Jason Tatum conversation, but I think right now Jason Tatum is too good of a basketball player not to take that team to a top 4 seed.
You think so?
I think Jason Tatum. No, seriously, tonight I'm looking. So Eddie House made a comment earlier on the show how he's talking about people talking about Jason Tatum settling, and he's like, he doesn't settle if you really watch him every night. He does blah blah blah. And which was ironic about that is Jason Tatum, the next possession, it was a 2-for-1 settles, and then he was like, no, that's the 2-for-1, 2-for-1, 2-for-1. And it's like, okay. But he was talking about how people don't watch Jason Tatum make these comments, right? Well, I was thinking when he was talking about that, I was going, Colin Cowherd, there's no way he watches Jason Tatum. I'm like, if he actually watched Jason Tatum, he'd be like, wow, this player's actually good. Whoa.
Right.
Like, sorry, I didn't understand your game, Jason Tatum. Like, if Colin Cowherd watched Jason Tatum as much as we did, he would have more respect for Jason Tatum, and he wouldn't go on his show and talk badly about Jason Tatum, because Jason Tatum, seriously, the heights he's ascending to as a superstar player, we've talked about it so many times this season, but it was on display yet again tonight. 30 points, 9 rebounds, 9 assists, and I believe it was 10 of 23 from the floor. Might have taken a couple extra shots
11 to
at the end of the
24.
game. So yeah, 11 to 24, made one more shot at the end of the game, but made his way to the free throw line 7 times. And Jason Tatum, this was almost another routine dominant game for Tatum. I mean, we picked Sam Hauser for the player spotlight tonight, but what Jason Tatum did on the floor, if Sam Hauser didn't shoot 8 of 10 from 3, I think it would have gone to Jason Tatum tonight, because he was that good in this game. And Jason Tatum throughout all these games has been that good. It's a routine night in and night out thing that Jason Tatum goes out there and plays absolute dominant basketball. And offensively, Jason Tatum, the seasoning he's had on that end of the floor, I mean, he is a 6'10" guard who is experienced to the point where he is making the right decision on the offensive end of the floor every single time. And teams, if you're not double teaming him, if you're going straight up one-on-one, they just can't contain him. They can't guard him. And defensively too, Jason Tatum this season, it's not like he's had this all defensive type of season, but his ability on that end of the floor, we all know how elite it is as well. So if Jason Tatum was paired up with, what we were talking about, Derek White, Sam Hauser, Al Horford, and the other starter was Pritchard. So Pritchard, White, Horford, and Hauser, that's your starting 5. And then your Shireman, Craig, all those guys, Cornette off the bench. I think Jason Tatum is good enough to take that squad to a top 4 seed in the Eastern Conference, because Jason Tatum does not get enough respect as being a near LeBron-esque, Giannis-esque, Jokic-esque player in the NBA. We think about those guys, even Luka, their teams are typically really good. Why? Because these players elevate everybody on the roster. Jason Tatum, what he does alone for the Celtics is superstar stuff, but what he does for everybody else on the roster, that brings him into all-time great status. He's going to attain that with rings over time, but just in his play in general, Jason Tatum, I seriously do not believe people are paying attention to him enough right now and how good he actually is. And he's a huge part of my answer as to why that Celtics team with that lineup, missing some of the key guys now, why they would be so good. I mean, it's Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum is the obvious guy.
And can I add this to it? I would guarantee if that was the starting lineup that Jason Tatum had to play with for an entire regular season, he would end up winning the regular season MVP hands down.
That I agree
with
with.
that
I agree with.
roster, and that's something that we're gonna see now that we've started to have that whole future conversation in this post game today. Is as you start to see the Celtics start to lose out on players like Jrue Holiday, Sam Hauser, over time, players maybe like Kristaps Porzingis. I am hesitant to say it because I'm gonna be incredibly upset for the day that those guys are walking out of the doors of TD Garden, but that's when you're gonna see Jason Tatum start to get his independent individual accolades, is when him and Jaylen Brown are forced to carry the entire weight of the entire team on their shoulders, don't have to stagnate, don't need to feed everyone else, don't need to put the ball on everyone else's plate on the team. When it's just that Tatum needs to carry this team, so does Brown. That we're going to be like almost expecting them to have 60 points a game together as a duo is going to be a point that we're going to see the Celtics reach. And with the experience that they're going to be able to build with this year's championship and so on and so forth, I think that Tatum will be able to live up to that challenge. And that's exactly when you'll start to hear that national notoriety of Tatum being in a top 5, top 3 MVP caliber player.
So assume they finished the year 8, there's 11 game left, 8-3. So they win 59 games. Finish 59-22.
59. No, there's no jokes here, people. It's not 10 away or anything. I'm just saying it's the inside joke is we had a conversation with Griffin. It's like, how many wins is this team going to have? And we were like, 60 would be so great because like the whole season we went through, like we thought this team wasn't that team, and then they win 60 games anyway. And I went, no. The way this team operates is they go to the line, and then they just kind of come up a little short. It's like I feel like 59 might be right where this team finishes.
They'll lose that Charlotte Sunday game at 1 p.m.
right on League Pass. So assume they win 59. A lot of this year has been guys are out of the lineup, so it's not like they've seen 82 games of this team fully healthy. So the starters have only played 20 games. I don't know their record within those 20 games. I would say, assuming the Detroit Pistons also win 8 more games, which puts them at 47 wins, I would say that the Celtics team is probably 3 games better than what that Piston team is with this lineup with Jason Tatum. I think they're a little bit better than Detroit. I think the one thing, and I agree with you guys with Tatum, I mean, he is that good. That bench, however, the Celtics rolled out with tonight over 82 games really is just that bad, where I think it would become a real problem, and you could see this team, I say anywhere between 49 to 45 wins is where this team is. They're definitely a playoff team. I wouldn't go as far to say top 4 seed just because of how bad the bench is. Now, if I could replace Brown, Porzingis, and Holiday, which are all-star caliber players, with maybe 3 role players, 3 bench guys that can come in and contribute, then I'd go out and say this is a top 4 seed easily. But I can't in this hypothetical. So this lineup, I'm going to say like 46 wins. But I agree. If Tatum was operating with this type of team every single night, he probably already has an MVP. And he probably would win another one because that's just how good he is. I mean, tonight, in my opinion, this was a poor Jason Tatum kind of performance. But you look at the stat sheet and he had 30 points, 9 rebounds, 9 assists, a steal, 2 blocks. He just has so happened to shoot 11 of 24 from the floor, which really isn't that bad, and 1 of 7 from deep. So what felt like kind of like a game from him. I said to text you this, Seamus, a mad game. You look at the box score and he almost had a 30-point triple-double. And I think that would just kind of be the player Tatum is at this point in his career with this type of lineup when he's operating with the ball in his hand, like Luka is, like Jokic is, like Giannis is. That's just how good he is. And so I'd say 46 win. Again, if you can give me a real bench, Jason Tatum would make some noise with this team. I mean, if you can give me a real bench, give me a Dorian Finney-Smith perhaps off the bench and a couple other guys, right? I think this team's cooking with gas still because that's how good I believe Jason Tatum is. So I was thinking about it, a little question there. I was watching this guy. How many games? Because this is a Blazers team, right? That this lineup's kind of steamrolling. That's like been playing good basketball. Like this isn't just this is a team that's playing for something, and they have been playing really well. This is the third best defensive team over the last 25 games, and we just hung 130 points on them, and we're missing 3 starters, and not just 3 starters. Jaylen Brown, Kristaps Porzingis, Drew Holiday, like those aren't just starters. So
3 Hall of Fame starters.
Yeah, right.
Basically.
Like my conclusion, I think the conclusion to this point is this Celtics team is really effing good, like really good. And it's like stuff like nights like tonight kind of shows you the big picture here with this Celtics team and why we say what we say, because we watch these guys every night. We see how deep they are. And when you see a night like tonight, when shout out, I don't even know where that's Australia. Hey man,
Tasmania.
Go Celtics. Go Celtics from Australia.
Down under.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's how good they are, and that's how impressive it is. And it's like when you see Cleveland, it's like, okay, yeah, like no, like I'm sorry, you see stuff tonight. If Cleveland isn't 3 of their starters, do they have the firepower to produce a night like tonight? I don't think they do. And again, it's a regular season game 71. Does it really mean anything in the grand scheme of things? No, but you can take away points from it. And the couple points is Jason Tatum's really good at basketball, right? And the Celtics are really deep. And again, I saw the other day that the Oklahoma City Thunder now are favorites to win the NBA title. Celtics, this is their first time they haven't been the favorites to win the title since October of 2023. Guys, we've talked about it a little bit. Do the Boston Celtics and the Oklahoma City Thunder, do the Oklahoma City Thunder have a shot, right, at beating the Celtics? Should they be favorites?
Of course, they have a shot. I mean, I won't say, like
that's why I reworded it. Should they be favorites right now?
All right. So favorites. The argument for the favorites. First of all, people are putting up money for this. Sharp bettors, everybody. So it's like this is based on investment, right? Within this particular market. I would say right now, the Oklahoma City Thunder, they look like the best basketball team in the NBA. I mean, they just came into TD Garden, controlled a game against the Boston Celtics, won the game down the stretch against the Boston Celtics, and outside of that, they have the best record in the NBA. Cavs, 4 straight losses. The Thunder right now are slotted as, from what I can see, the best team in the NBA. But you could easily say, take everybody back to 2022, right? A lot of people have been comparing this Oklahoma City Thunder team to the 2022 Boston Celtics. Yep. See it pointing at himself right now. But that's exactly what I see with this Oklahoma City Thunder scenario. The only difference is Thunder are going to have an MVP, potentially in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, on their roster come playoff time, whereas that 2022 Celtics team, I wouldn't say that version of Jason Tatum was MVP level, and I wouldn't say it's as good as this Jason Tatum today. But that 2022 Celtics club, they had a harder road in the East. They were new and upcoming. They, of course, I don't want to say ran the table in terms of winning every single game, but that's what it felt like they did at the end of the regular season in order to get up to that 2 seed. They were actually the 1 seed at a certain point in time, fell down to the 2. Come playoff time, They ran through the East, and it wasn't a ran through in terms of just dominating anybody. They had to beat the Nets, they had to beat the Bucks, they had to beat the Heat, three formidable opponents at the time. And then, of course, they faced the Golden State Warriors in the finals, who were much more experienced at that point in time. The Warriors, their path to the finals, the West was not as vigorous as the East that year. The West, the Warriors had to face the Nuggets without Jamal Murray in the first round. In round 2, they had to face the Grizzlies without Ja Morant for half of the series. In round 3, they didn't have to see the Phoenix Suns. They saw the Dallas Mavericks instead, and Luka Doncic leading a team with Kristaps Porzingis and Jalen Brunson to the conference finals. And Reggie Bullock was on that team too. The Warriors saw a much easier path. This year, the Celtics and the Thunder, that's the thing. I see the Celtics in the East. The one threat in the East I see to the Boston Celtics, and it's the most obvious one. We've been talking about it. It's the Cleveland Cavaliers. Okay, they're number 1 seed. They're up there. They've challenged the Boston Celtics multiple times this year, played great games against the Cavs. It's obviously the Cleveland Cavaliers. Every other team, they don't have the chutzpah to beat the Boston Celtics. They don't have the talent. They don't have the execution. The New York Knicks, I'm not worried about. I mean, I'll actually rebuttal the bench thing real quick. The reason I would say the Celtics could be a top 4 seed with that lineup we were talking about earlier is because the Bucks. Look at the Bucks and the Knicks. I go, what do they have after their starting lineups? And even the Bucks starting lineup, it's like, they have 2 stars, and they have the Bucks have kind of in terms of putting more concrete on their rotation this year. They've done it a little bit, but I will say the Milwaukee Bucks and New York Knicks, both of those teams, it's like, they don't have the depth as the Boston Celtics. They don't have the versatility. And you look at the Pistons, the Pacers, you could say the same thing. The Pistons, they're part of their core is still young. After that, you're just looking at a bunch of teams who are discombobulated. I mean, the whole the whole play-in field right now is just full of discombobulated teams. It's Atlanta, who traded 2 of their forwards in the middle of the season. It's Orlando, who sustained just catastrophic injury after catastrophic injury. It was Boncaro first, then it was Franz Wagner, then it was Mo Wagner, and then it was Jalen Suggs. And they've just had a roller coaster season, and it's just been going down, down, down ever since really the mid part of the season. You had the Miami Heat. They've been absolutely terrible without Jimmy Butler.
Finally won tonight, though. Finally won. Streak's over.
Great for them. Great for the Miami Heat on winning a basketball game. I didn't know they were capable of doing that anymore. But after that, it's the Bulls at 10. I'm not even going to talk about them because I don't even think they're going to win their 9-10 playing game. But every other team in the East you see in the playoff picture right now, the Boston Celtics, the Bucks don't have the versatility. The Knicks don't have the versatility or the depth. The Pistons, the Pacers, I just don't see them having enough talent. And then all the play-in teams are all discombobulated. I see the Celtics playoff path in the East not as easy as it was last year, but I do look at the opponents and go, these are not going to be all-time series. I just don't see us playing an all-time series in the second round with a team like Milwaukee, Indiana maybe, and round 3 it could be Cleveland. That's what it could be. That's what I'm saying is the main, in the East it's Cleveland. But when you talk about winning the championship, you got to beat somebody out west too. And right now, I'm actually overlooking the Cavs in the East. We've been focusing on the Cavs all year because that's what's going to come first before the Celtics go to the finals. But the Cavs don't concern me as much as the Thunder do. I really think the Thunder, they are a team that could cause the Celtics some real problems. Cleveland, I think they're 2 small guards being their main offensive contributors, plus a forward lineup that I just don't believe when it comes time is going to have enough versatility to really match up with Tatum and Brown. And then their big guy rotation, I still think that is something that it's like, if we want to take Jared Allen out, it's like you're literally taking a $30 million player out of your lineup at that point in time. And I just don't know how the Cavs match up with the Celtics all that well over a 7-game series. The Thunder, on the other hand, I think the Thunder, what the Celtics have an advantage over the Thunder in is size, but everything else and energy, execution. You could say the Celtics come playoff time at that point in the playoffs could be the better executing team. But the other night, it was the Oklahoma City Thunder. I mean, they were the ones who were shutting down the Boston Celtics and doing what they wanted to do on the offensive end of the floor. And they really got the Celtics to play a brand of basketball in which they were comfortable with letting them play. And so that's why the Thunder, there are multiple aspects to the Thunder, their youth, their ability just on both ends of the floor offensively. They cut hard. They really have an offensive system which they believe in. They play fast paced. Defensively, they have hound dogs all over that defense who could really stymie Brown and Tatum come playoff time. But the thing that I look at with the Thunder and go, the reason they're on par with this 2022 Celtics team, the reason they are is the West is crazy. The West is absolutely crazy. I mean, you're talking about a Thunder team that in the first round, you could face a team like Minnesota in round one, theoretically. You could face a team down in the standings right now that the West play-in is a lot more formidable than the East play-in. And the Thunder, they could end up with a slightly tougher matchup in round one. Round two, they could match up with a team like the Nuggets or the Lakers in round two. And then in round three, they could do the same thing again. And that's where I see the West is this conference where if you're the Thunder, you could run into multiple teams out West that could really give you a tough series, where the Celtics, I don't really see that out East. And by the time they come together come playoff time, you go, oh, okay, maybe the Celtics. It's like, I think the Celtics could have that advantage in about, I mean, right now it's March. I mean, this is going to be a matchup that happens in June. Think about how far away that is. I mean, that could happen, 3 months from now. Celtics could be the better executing team and the team with more energy, more gas in their tank at the time. But right now, I would say Oklahoma City Thunder, as the favorites, you have to give it to them because of their track record up to this point in the regular season. But every single scenario coming their way does run parallels with what the 2022 Celtics ran into and what the really 2022 Warriors ran into as well. And in that scenario, I think the Boston Celtics come June could have an advantage over the Oklahoma City Thunder if the Oklahoma City Thunder even make it out of the West. That's what's also surprising about all this is the favorites. It's not surprising with their resume, but I will say the conferences. The Celtics, they're going through a lesser conference than the Oklahoma City Thunder, who, in my mind, they could have 3 tough series or at least 2 tough series in the semifinals and conference finals, where the Celtics, they only play that 1 tough series out East. And at that point, the Celtics is just a much easier path for them to win in the championship. That's the only argument I'd give the Celtics right now, as well as experience. But everything as of late has been pointing to, the Thunder are the best team in the NBA right now. And I'll give that to them because, hey, head-to-head, they beat the Celtics one-on-one. I mean, we just saw it. I mean, Rob, weren't you at I believe you were at the Garden for that one. Am I mistaken? Or were you at?
No, I wasn't. I was not there I was there for the Brooklyn game. But I will say this. In regards to Oklahoma, OKC, ABC, BBC, season 6. That's what I gotta say. Shout out Shannon Sharp, because the Thunder are not beating the Celtics in any world, in any shape, any form. Not this year. Not this year at all. Because again, so Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is probably the guy, the superstar I have the least respect for right now in the NBA. Because I look at him and I say, what have you done? What have you done? What have you accomplished? You're 27. I'm not mistaken. Is he 27, 26? You're now entering year 7. What have you done? What have you like? Nothing. You made it the second round last year. Great. Like applause. But the favorites, I agree. Oklahoma City's playing some great basketball, right? They're well coached. They play some phenomenal defense. They got a superstar who is a fluent, is a scoring machine, right? How he gets those buckets is up in conversation. I see a Houston Rockets. I see a Philadelphia 76ers. That's what I see. And it's the new shiny thing. And you know, it's impressive what they've done, but Shai Gilgeous-Alexander isn't in the same stratosphere as some of these other guys, like Nikola Jokic, like Giannis Antetokounmpo, like Jason Tatum, like even Luka Doncic, who he has to get through out West. Those guys are established. They've been there. They've gone through the hardships. They've done that before. Shai hasn't. He's in year 7, and I'm sorry. I have very little respect for what SGA has done. Right now, I can't discredit the season he's put together. Right. You know, I think his numbers jump off the page 100%. But if you look at his play style, if you look at how Oklahoma City succeeds, they got 2 aspects of this. One, they could succeed come playoff time because defensively, they're a unit, right? You said it. Lou Dort, Alex Caruso, Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren. Those guys defend, right? They're pesky defenders. That is something that they can hang their hat on. They might score 102, but the other team's scoring 101. I can respect that factor. I think offensively, what Oklahoma City might run into is that they can't generate it. Because a lot of what SGA does is manipulation of the game, right? No opinion on it. Not saying it's bad, not saying it's good. We've seen superstars in the NBA get away, make a hell of a career out of it. We've seen James Harden make a career out of it and win MVP, even though really there was more to his game. Joel Embiid made a career out of it. Even Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan had their fair share of manipulation of the game, right? Once you understand it, you can manipulate it and you play into your favor. However, the manipulation factor goes out the window come playoff. I mean, it doesn't. That is why we have seen guys like Joel Embiid, like James Harden struggle come April. Yep. And the thing with SGA, and I sometimes there are just good regular season players, right? We've seen it before. Sometimes there are just guys who are really talented in producing the regular season. We've seen it. DeMar DeRozan and the Toronto Raptors, amazing example of that. DeMar DeRozan was just a regular season guy. Even Paul George in those Indiana Pacers teams, right? They were phenomenal. They went toe-to-toe with the Miami Heat. And if LeBron James didn't exist, right, maybe they're a little bit more. But at the end of the day, their legacy is they put together some amazing regular seasons. So I look at the Thunder, I look at their track record, I look at what they've shown me. In the NBA is what have you done for me, league? They haven't done anything for me. They haven't moved the needle for me. So I won't say that they're the title favorites, right? I look at the Boston Celtics. They're defending NBA champions playing really good basketball. They are still the title favorites. Outside of Boston, I look at Denver because, again, anytime you have Nikola Jokic, you're probably gonna have a puncher's chance, and they're not playing the worst basketball. They are still flowing a little bit. I think Oklahoma falls into the category of the next tier of teams who are playing really good basketball but haven't proven anything. I think a lot like Cleveland, they're in that tier. I think a lot like Houston, they're in that tier where they're playing really good basketball, but it's never shown in April. This roster hasn't shown it in April. And I think that's a question mark. And that is, I'm sorry, it is worth noting. This team has not done anything. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, their number one, their superstar, their potential MVP, has not ever shown it to me in April. So what makes me think this year is going to be different? Again, you talk about playoffs and answering questions. We'll just have to wait and see if that question gets answered, which it could. But so far, making predictions, I can't just assume it. I'm not just going to go. I've never seen it before and say, oh, yeah, like, right? I've never seen, I'm not going to go there. I'm not going to go where I was going to go. But seriously, I do think that I do think they got to show it to me first.
Yeah. Like I've said before, Seamus pointed out, whoever that guy was that compared the Oklahoma City Thunder to the 2021-2022 Boston Celtics must have been a really cool, handsome, good-looking guy. But
maybe from Cape,
maybe from Cape Cod. I don't know. Radio something, radio boy, radio man, whatever it was. But I just see this Thunder team just being a heartbreak or like a heartbreak or two away. I think that if they make the NBA, if they win an NBA championship, I just think that it will be coming a little bit early within their window of opportunities to win. I think that this is a team that's destined to have a type of stretch that the Boston Celtics have had are having this year for the next 3 or 4 years after this. Talking about like 2026, 2027, that's when I think that you'll start to see the Oklahoma City Thunder really run away and start making their case a lot more solidified to be that NBA favorite. But until someone knocks the Boston Celtics off of the totem pole, and if regular season went a little bit different for the Celtics, right, and they played down a little bit. Obviously, the 2 losses to Oklahoma City Thunders probably what are
Yeah, I mean, we
given
lost
all
twice
that.
to Denver last year, and it was a
Yeah,
whole thing, and we didn't even see them. So it's like,
right.
how much stock do you put
Exactly.
in, right? So it's like, and Seamus, you make a great point. You look at the path. Boston's path really could be a lot easier, much easier than what Oklahoma City has to go through. So at the end of the day, these two teams might not even see each other in the finals, and that 0-2 record means literally nothing.
Well, right. I mean, we saw, I mean, you said it. We saw it last year with the Denver Nuggets. We were worried, oh my gosh, Denver, we can't handle Denver. But we saw Dallas in the NBA Finals last year. We never had a conversation on post game
Right.
about facing the Dallas Mavericks in the finals last year when we actually played the Dallas Mavericks throughout the regular season. And I'll point out last year's West, just not as good as this year's West. Now, last year you had 4 teams and then really 3 teams at the end of the year. 4 teams throughout the year, then 3 teams. Clippers kind of fell off there at the end of the year, but 3 teams were the number 1 overall seed. It's not as if the West wasn't great last year too with some of these teams, but this year in particular, I look at 1 through 6, and 1 through 7 really. I mean 6 and 7 right now. At the Warriors and the Timberwolves, and then you have the Clippers right around 8 there, and they're kind of jockeying positions. I mean it's basically the range in the tiers. But those 3 teams, like could you face if you're the Oklahoma City Thunder? Could you face the Golden State Warriors in a round 1 scenario if the Warriors were to somehow drop to 8? You could face the Clippers. The Clippers are not going to be an easy out right away. I mean, they're not as good as the Thunder, but they're not going to be an easy out right away. You could face the Timberwolves, who were in the Western Conference Finals last year and are actually playing some good basketball as of late. Maybe it just took them the whole entire season to get acclimated with Julius
Right.
Randle, but maybe we're actually starting to see it. But outside of those 3 teams where the Thunder could face any of those teams in the first round, I mean, look at your potential second round opponents. That 4 or 5 seed could be Memphis, could be Houston, could be LA, could be Denver, could be any of those teams. From really 2 to 5, we look 2, 3, 4, and 5. Those teams, I mean, they're really just they could be in any position on any given night, and those teams are tough. I mean, I'm looking at specifically the Lakers and the Nuggets as those are real experienced teams with former MVPs on their roster. They have other experienced superstars on the roster who have been in these situations, who have made runs. Obviously, the Lakers with LeBron and Luka, but the Nuggets with Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic, and just all of the role players that come along with those 2 teams. They're very sizable, very physical. The Nuggets will have some shooting questions come playoff time, but the pace slows, and maybe that's not as big of a question. But that's why I see the Thunder right now. That's what I do question is, okay, with these odds favoring the Oklahoma City Thunder. I see the trajectory of it where I go, okay, the Thunder beat the Celtics at home. The Thunder are just they're not losing. I mean, the Cavaliers, that's what's putting the Thunder up on a pedestal right now. Is the Cavs and the Thunder, they were like this the whole season. And the Celtics, they're just, they're right behind them. But now all of a sudden the Cavs lose 4 straight. The Thunder keep going on. They have the best record by far. And the Oklahoma City Thunder, they picked up good wins as of late. They keep winning. I could see a scenario where I go, okay, yeah, Oklahoma City, the way they're playing right now at this point, could be considered the favorites. But there are elements of this that I do question, and one of them is the path. We already talked about the path. I mean, we might see the Lakers, we might see the Nuggets out of the West, the Rockets, the Grizzlies. The Grizzlies are not going to be an easy series if they face the Oklahoma City Thunder in the second round. I mean, that's these where narratives are formed with these teams. It's a bunch of teams in the West we're not really thinking of. Then all of a sudden, oh, they beat the Thunder, and then that's the new crown jewel out west. But the whole season, it's Thunder, Cavs out east. But what this entire point is, the favoritism right now for the Oklahoma City Thunder in the odds. The path is one thing, but another thing is the part of the season. It's a real testament to how well the Thunder are actually playing right now for them to go ahead and grab the favorite spot from the Boston Celtics, because this entire season the Celtics have been really behind the Cavs and the Thunder since October, since November. I mean, the Thunder, the Cavs, they just started out the season running. They haven't stopped sprinting. But in that stretch, the Boston Celtics, they were a legitimate 500 basketball team over a 20
Like
game
26
stretch.
games. Yeah, 26, 13 and 13.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the perfect
Yeah.
stat right there, 13 to 13 in 26 games. They were a 500 basketball team. Why didn't the Boston Celtics at that point in time lose their standing as the favorites in the
Right.
title odds? Yet now going into the playoffs, the Celtics, oh, we're 20-4. Yeah, we understand these other teams, they're doing what they're doing. But the Celtics, what they're doing, they're 20-4. Yes, 2 of those losses are to the Cavs and the Thunder. But 20-4, with that record, the Celtics are rolling. They're not showing any signs of losing any of these games, even games where they're kind of going through the motions. The Celtics, they're still controlling them. And yet the Thunder surpass the Celtics now. I mean, that's what doesn't make any sense to me is you could have done this months ago. Months ago. If it happened in January, I would have went, fine. I mean, that's where we're at. But now the Celtics have turned the corner. It looks like they're actually hitting their stride come playoff time, which right now I'm seriously seeing the perfect scenario play out for the Celtics in terms of them ramping up come playoffs. The Jaylen Brown injury is definitely the little red light thing where it's like, all right, what's going on with that? But everything else, the team is playing well. They're playing cohesively on the offensive end of the floor. They're getting after it defensively. They're going into the playoffs, managing themselves these next 11 games. They're exactly where they want to be coming off of a championship run last year. Now this regular season run into now back-to-back run this season in the playoffs. The Celtics are exactly where they want to be. And I just look at that and go, how do you lose your standing as the favorites when you're exactly where you want to be to go and repeat versus where you were in January, where that time period to me could have been the time where the Celtics actually lose it. And now all of a sudden the Thunder, they've gone ahead of the Celtics. Again, a testament to the Thunder, how well they're playing right now, but it doesn't make a ton of sense to me other than maybe people paying more attention to it, putting money on it now before the playoffs compared to January. That could be something. But yeah, the title odds favorites, I'm not even paying attention to them, quite honestly, because
I'm not betting on it.
I mean, really, the Celtics, like I said, they're right where they need to be. And these kind of things, every single year, we have our favorites. We have our underdogs. And the NBA playoffs, that's why the NBA playoffs are so interesting, is they answer so many questions. They define so many narratives. And we are going to see a lot of results that contradict what we thought we were going to see throughout the regular season. Happens every single year. Every single year. We're going to see a team in the playoffs go off. We're going to see a team in the playoffs unfortunately walk off the court and go home a lot sooner than we thought. And that's just the nature of the game of basketball. And the Celtics, give me just a top 3. If you're top 3 in title odds or really top 2 where the Celtics are right now, you're still good. Still good. It's like, all right,
so
we're still up.
You guys made the comparison to the 22 Celtics for the Thunder. I don't hate that. I'm going to make the comparison to the 2024 Minnesota Timberwolves. Now, there's a specific moment within that playoff run where a reporter asked Karl Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards, they're sitting on the podium, and the question was, essentially, you guys really haven't lost before. And Kat alludes to, what do you mean? Like, we've been losing for 7 years. What do you mean? Like, have we not lost enough? But what they failed to realize, they hadn't really lost before. They had never gotten just within eyesight of the mountaintop and fallen short. That's losing, right? Losing isn't being the 13 seed, being the 14 seed, being the 12 seed. That's not losing, right? Yeah, you're losing games, but you haven't really lost. Exactly. I look at this Thunder team and I think they haven't lost yet. When was the last time? The 2015 Warriors, which are like the exception of all exceptions in modern day NBA basketball. They're the last team. And really, you want my opinion? If Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love don't get hurt, they do lose before they win. And history looks eerily different. But you need to lose. You need to come up short in today's NBA before you get to the mountaintop. Because those moments, odds are you're seeing a team that's been there before. Those moments, high pressure cooker, the team that's been there before, 95% of the time is going to come out on top. Look at the Celtics series last year against the Pacers. If Indiana had been there before, that's a 7-game series. They had it. They got swept as a result because experience got the best of them. Boston made every big play down the stretch. Indiana couldn't figure it out. They hadn't been there. They're inexperienced, and they fell short.
Well, I'll even add to that. Throw out the 2015 Warriors, honestly, in that scenario where it's like they're the exception, because even then they lost to the San Antonio Spurs in 2013, I believe, in the second round, and then 2014 they lost a 7-game series to the Clippers in round one, and even that team had some experience to it. You could say I was looking maybe 2012 OKC it. And I think in 2011 they lost to Dallas, if I'm not
They
mistaken.
did in the Western Conference Finals.
So it's like
the conference finals, in my eyes, it's a different beast, right? Because like you see guys get to like Joel Embiid's been in the second round, right? But it's that when you're the Final Four, when you're fighting to go to the NBA Finals, that's when it really that's when it happens. You need at least to get to the conference finals before you get to the NBA Finals.
You watch another team hoist up a trophy or has confetti coming down on them.
Right? Yeah.
Well, that's exactly what happens in those rounds too. I mean, you're seeing. I mean, look at the Celtics before they actually made the finals. How many times they watched another team's trophy ceremony? I mean,
I watched the Warriors and the Heat.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. So it's like that's my point with OKC, where it's like I don't think they've lost enough yet. And I know that's crazy, but like you got to lose. Like you just kind of have to. It's like part of becoming a winner is losing, right? Like it might sound corny, but like that's like in sports, that kind of how it happens. When you're in a league with established guys that have been there before and have gone through it and know how to, take advantage of a moment, you got to lose. So I don't know who it's going to be. I don't know where they're going to lose. Maybe again, Seamus, you said it multiple times this postgame show. The playoffs. Well, we just have to wait and see because they could shut all of us up, right? Teams, rise above expectation. Teams plummet below expectations. Teams meet expectations. Like that's what's so fun about the playoffs. All these questions get answered, right? It's like you see the test results finally show up for the C's 82 long, exam. So it we'll have to wait and see. But again, OKC. I do think they're probably a year or two away from really being real contenders. Like right once they've been there before, then they're going to get really dangerous. Yeah, a lot like the Celtics team, right? So the Celtics team didn't get really dangerous until they had been there and kind of lost and came up short, and then they kind of they understood it. So I mean, we'll have to wait and see.
But Oklahoma City thought okay, so this is the thing that actually gets me too about the NBA regular season and going into the NBA playoffs is. I just hate the fact that everybody looks at the records and just assumes. Okay, 1 through 8, it's going to be 1-4, 2-3, then it's going to be 1-2 in the conference. It's like people look at that look at the scenario of that playing out every single year. I mean, that's just what it is. I mean, this year, I'm tired of people just assuming, OKC, Cleveland, Boston. I really am, because there are other quality teams out in the NBA landscape, out on the NBA field, who could undoubtedly make a run to the NBA Finals this year. Less so out of the East, more so out of the West. But I want to hear people's opinions on why Oklahoma City why the Oklahoma City Thunder are the top team in the West. I want to hear people's opinions as to why they believe the Cleveland Cavaliers will either beat or not beat the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference, why the Celtics are better than the Knicks in the Eastern Conference. But out West specifically, it's it's just OKC. But there are other quality teams out there. The Nuggets, the Lakers. I'm really looking at those two squads. I'm going, those teams are built for the playoffs. The Lakers and the Nuggets right now are built for the playoffs, in my opinion. The Rockets, the Grizzlies, the Rockets are kind of still in that young category, but again, they're a frisky team. You're saying the Rockets and the Thunder. Yes, the Rockets aren't as efficient of a team as the Oklahoma City Thunder, not as versatile of a team, but hey, they're just as young. They have the same hunger out there to go out there and win. And the Houston Rockets, they would be a tough out in any series. The Memphis Grizzlies, now they haven't really lost too much, but they've been there a couple times. Round one against the Los Angeles Lakers a couple of years ago in 2023. And then in 2022, you have the second round series against the Warriors, the first round series against the Minnesota Timberwolves. Those were both hard fought series for the Memphis Grizzlies. Before that, you have the 2021 play-in, you have the 2020 bubble play-in as well if you're the Memphis Grizzlies. And that team has changed so much since then, but that team does have some experience under their belt come playoff time. There's more questions like just individually with all these teams to be answered, but just the West in general. I'm tired of people overlooking these other teams. Like they exist, folks. They exist. It's like we can't just be OKC and Cleveland. It's like look at these other teams. They exist. Even in the East, I want to give Milwaukee their respect out East because it's like
and
they
Indiana.
have
Indiana
too. Indiana is a better team than they were last season when they made the conference final. Like they made the conference finals in relatively the same East last year. Obviously, some young talent has emerged, and other talent has kind of taken a back seat in some areas. But relatively the same Eastern Conference. The Pacers made the conference finals last year. They have a better team this year. They have more cohesion within that team at the end of the year. That team was injured when we saw them. Halliburton, Mathurin, they weren't even playing. Now it's another even question if they even mesh with each other. But in the East, you have again the Pistons. It's like how far could they go within the playoffs? They're really the new entity. It's like what are we expecting out of the Pistons? But again, Milwaukee. It's like Milwaukee's gonna have the advantage of having the best player in the series almost every single time. And I would actually say Milwaukee against Boston. Hey, Jason Tatum is coming for that title of King of the East from Giannis. I think he's gained it in some aspects of his game and within winning the title as well. But it's still neck and neck between Tatum and Giannis in that series. Milwaukee, it's like they could have the better player in that series. Boston, you could see Jason Tatum ascend above Giannis in a scenario like that. But I'm just saying these teams out west and even a couple teams out east, gotta give them their respect because otherwise, I mean, that's what I just don't enjoy about the end of the year when something comes to fruition that we all don't expect, like the Dallas Mavericks say last year making the NBA Finals. Like we spent so much time talking about, could the Celtics face the Nuggets? Oh, it might be the Timberwolves out of the West. Like, what do we think about the Clippers? And we even did talk about the Thunder last year as well. They were the #1 seed last year on the last day of the season, of course, not as dominant, but it's like, oh no, it was none of those teams. It was the Mavericks. So that's why we got to give all these teams respect for what they are. And people just, my point here is people have to be considering the scenarios of what could play out rather than what they believe right now is just going to play out based on the standings. I mean, the regular season, I'm sorry, folks, it just has to do everything with where everybody's slotted come playoff time. After that, everybody is just 0-0 and it's a new ball game. It's really a new season come playoff time. And that has to be, we go through this every single year, but it has to be considered more. It's like the first week of the NBA season. It's like we see something the first week, we're like, oh, look at that, and then it doesn't happen the rest of the year. And it's like, exactly. I guess 2-2 didn't matter. I guess the 4-game sample size didn't matter. But
exactly,
that's the point here.
Well, guys, as for tonight, the Celtics, they got the best of the Portland Trailblazers shorthanded. Again, no Jaylen Brown, no Kristaps Porzingis, no Drew Holiday tonight. Expect to see Porzingis and Holiday back in the lineup tomorrow night against the Sacramento Kings as the Boston Celtics will play the second night of a back-to-back tomorrow. Tip-off at 10 p.m. Eastern time. A late one, guys. Well, stay up with us after the final buzzer sounds because we still have you covered for Celtics Talk Weekly post-game live, a little late-night show. Those are always fun. So come back here after the final buzzer, guys. Tonight, the Celtics, again, they beat the Portland Trailblazers. 129-116 was your final score out of Portland. Boston, now winners of 5 in a row, will look to make it 6 tomorrow night. Sam Hauser was your SeatGeek player spotlight of the game. 24 points, 3 rebounds, a block in there for Sam. How about 8 made 3-pointers on the night on 10 attempts for Sam? Guys, cue the music because it was a big time Celtics win. And as of next time, so